Hello. Shit, my nails. Hi, my name's R-Kadi. I use he, him pronouns, and, this is the face. Initially, when I was planning this Demon Slayer video, I had not intended to show my face whatsoever, then do a couple of videos and be like, hello, this is me, this is the person whose voice you've been listening to this entire time. What a twist! And then what happened was I recorded it, and then I tried to edit it, and then I tried to move files over to another spot, because, I didn't want, video and photos on, the C drive, so I moved to the D drive, and then I borked the whole thing, and then I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just gonna redo it. I'm gonna film myself talking at you, because I think it's gonna be easier to edit, plus there's a green binder. If I can figure out how to green screen that, she's gonna be green screen. That's all I'm gonna say today. But that is not the point of this video. The point of this video is not for me to complain about making this video. It's about this. Have you ever considered that Demon Slayer can be read as an anti-vaxx narrative? Now I hear you. You might be saying at this point, R-Kadi, that's insane. Demon Slayer is one of the most formulaic shonen anime to ever exist. It's about a boy, he fights demons. What else is there to it? And I hear you. But I have an argument to make. I can tell you exactly why I think that Demon Slayer works as an anti-vax narrative, and that Muzan is the vaccine. I'll get to that. But, for those not in the know of what the hell I'm talking about, what is Demon Slayer? What the hell is a Demon Slayer? What'd he do? So, it all starts off. There's this young boy. His name is Tanjiro Kamado. He is the eldest of, 5 siblings. The 4 other siblings, and the 2 parents, they live in this quaint little country house in the middle of the woods, and they sell wood. And one day, Tanjiro goes out to the nearest town to sell his wood. He comes back, and oh no, his entire family's gotten killed, except for his, one of his younger sisters, Nezuko. She's still alive, but something has changed her. She has, in fact, become the demon in the Demon Slayer. But Tanjiro realizes he cannot kill his sister. He cannot slay the demon that is his sister. He must instead go find the man that transformed her into a demon, kill him, and in the meantime, save her from the curse that is being a demon. So, that's the basic plot of Demon Slayer, and then he joins a bunch of people and whatnot. Just watch the show if you wanna. I'm not gonna force you to. You don't have to understand this video going forward, because I think I'll break it down fairly easy for you to understand what I'm getting at with the whole anti-vax thing. Number 1. The picturesque of the life before. So, as I mentioned in the beginning of this, there's a clear division between Tanjiro when his life is good, aka when he has his parents, he has his siblings. Nezuko is a normal young child living in the Taisho period. This is in the Taisho period, which is about 1912 to 1926. They don't give an exact year of when Demon Slayer takes place. It's just the general Taisho period. They're probably earlier. It's the whole thing, but that's whatever. There's a clear division between before Nezuko turns into a demon and after Nezuko turns into a demon. And there is one thing that was involved in that, and that was Muzan Kibutsushi. And so in a similar sense, for a lot of anti-vax parents, for a lot of the autism parents, there's this clear before and after the child becomes autistic, and that divide is the moment the child receives the vaccine. Now, of course, if you are a person that looks at science in any given capacity, you will realize that this divide does not really exist. There is no point in which before and after, that's when the child becomes autistic. There is a general range of times, or ages in which autism symptoms become more visible within a child, but there's not that clear thing. Sometimes you have those symptoms that are more evident before a child would get vaccinated, and then there's the after. But of course, not every parent is going to necessarily notice they're stressed. They're trying to figure out how this screaming, writhing little thing works. So they might not immediately notice. Obviously, they might check against milestones, but that's an entirely different thing. So, as an example of why this correlation doesn't necessarily work, because sometimes it doesn't always even really correlate, I'll give a story about myself. When I was a young little babe, or maybe when my brother was the young little babe, the subject of the story changes depending on how the person telling it wants to talk about it, and what point they want to make. I would travel to another country. Most of my family are from this other country. So, me and my two parents, we would fly to this other country, and we would stay with my paternal grandparents. Now, one of the things that my parents thought was that I was deaf, because whenever they would call out to me, I, as a young little baby, would not respond. I would not, refer to them in any given regard. So, there was the idea that I might have been deaf at the time. But my parents one day, they leave for whatever reason. I don't remember what. I was 9 months old to a year and a half max. But nevertheless, they leave and the door shuts. And it's a very loud noise because I'm like, what happened? What happened there? But because of that little head turn that it did, it was the people in my life realized this child is not deaf. There's something else going on, but the child is at least not deaf. And lo and behold, autism. But nevertheless, what I'm saying is correlation, not causation. Also, correlation doesn't always work, but, the anti-vax got anti-vax. Number 2, the desire to revert back. So obviously, a driving point of the narrative that is Demon Slayer is the belief that Nezuko can transform back into her former, more human state, so to state. But because that's always a given thing, and to a certain extent, it does develop in that sense. And of course, spoiler alert, Nezuko does become human again. So that kind of gives a sense of hope towards the show. Even if Nezuko goes through all that she does, she will eventually become human. That's kind of a given in the narrative to a certain degree. And in contrast, a lot of parents that have autistic children that believe that vaccines caused said autism believe that something similar can happen to their child. So they'll go through a whole lot of different methods to try and figure this out. Some of them are a bit more benign. You go ask pastor, whoever, for prayer. Sometimes it'll be a diet change. For example, gluten. A lot of the types of people that are ooh, you can lessen autism with a diet, gluten tends to be one of those ones that they tend to target. And of course, you have those technically more benign, still not great methods, versus bleach. Sometimes bleach is used to try and cure autism. I don't know how that works. I feel like that would be worse, but that's an entirely different aside. Nevertheless, all these methods are in the idea that an autistic child can be cured of autism, although that's not how that works, and the similar hope does not really exist for an anti-vax parent. So, this desire to revert back. Number 3, we have nonverbal. So, in the instance of Nezuko, as compared to the other demons, she does not talk for a good 3 seasons of the anime. I'm gonna refer to the anime here if I'm sorry, I'm an anime-only type of person. I like it when my characters talk, and I hear them, and I go, oh, they got voices and shit, wow. But nevertheless, Nezuko, for the most part of the show, is nonverbal, meaning she does not communicate using words. She'll make little grunts, she'll make little happy noises and whatnot, but she will not speak. It is at the very end of season 3, as a matter of fact, that she, puts words together in a sentence. And that's, more she uses the words around her that she has immediately heard, and then is able to construct a sentence based on those grammatical rules that she's had to, quickly learn in that regard. This comes off a little bit like echolalia. So echolalia, there's two types. There is immediate echolalia, where you hear a word or a sentence fragment or whatever, and then you immediately repeat it back. And then there's delayed echolalia, where you might have heard some type of word or sentence fragment in the past, and then you will like repeat it again in like a later circumstances. Echolalia and stimming can kind of like work together, where like you repeat the word or sentence fragment, not necessarily to communicate, but you like the sound of it, and so you'll like use it as like a way to calm down. But that's kind of getting off the point. Nevertheless, why does Nezuko being nonverbal even matter in the first place, you may ask? Because, like, if you are aware, not every autistic person is nonverbal. But for a lot of, like, anti-vax parents, stereotypically that is the case. That's why you'll get a lot of parents who will be like, well, my 5-year-old is like this, this, and that, and you're not like that because you can talk, therefore you're not autistic. Will be, like, a common refrain that a lot of, like, people that talk about autism online might get, because, you know, they're articulate, they're able to communicate in a more traditional sense compared to the hypothetical 5-year-old. But yes, to a lot of anti-vax parents, being autistic means that you must be nonverbal. Number 4, angry fits. So, of course, at the beginning of the show, Nezuko, the moment she becomes a demon, the moment she sees Tanjiro, she immediately goes on the attack. And she is just full of anger and cannot necessarily, like, use an appropriate target for that. Because technically speaking, no one is an appropriate target for a demon attack. She's gonna kill you. But I bring this up in comparison to autism because, like, for a number of autistic people, though not everyone, and not to a very severe extent in some instances, you'll have the meltdown. And in the worst cases, it can end up with either the person themselves being injured or other people being injured in some capacity because of this, like, type of violent attempt at self-simulation in order to calm down because of whatever given circumstances happening. And so this is not a good thing necessarily, but it is a thing that happens. So, and particularly that's how, like, autism parents think about their child and their autism. Like, angry fits, angry meltdowns is a thing that comes to mind. Number 5, the binary thinking. So, for a number of autistic people, thinking in nuance and shades of grays can be a bit difficult. So you'll tend to have more of that binary black and white type thinking. Thing good versus thing bad. Thing done this way good versus thing done this way bad type of thinking. And Nezuko seems to kind of display this, I believe, after episode 3 or 4. The one, Urokodaki. He explains to Tanjiro about, like, Nezuko's thinking that's been trained to a certain degree. That to her now, all demons, no matter what, are bad, and all of humanity, they are good. And in addition to them being good, they are good because they are family. And they are family almost in the literal sense. Like, she has supplanted the memories of her biological family onto humanity in general, and because she sees them as her literal family, she can now have the drive to protect and to be good to these people. Now, of course, you know, there are some exceptions to this. For example, episode 10, season 1, after the fight with the 2 other demons that come in to mess with Yushiro and Tamayo, there comes the question, why is Nezuko defending them? Why did Nezuko help them? They are demons. Are they not bad? But she has fit them into the binary framework. Demon good, humanity bad. She has fit them in the good category, as in she's now supplanted the memories of her biological family on. You get the point, you get the point. And so, this is like another kind of autistic way of thinking, so to speak. Number 6. Bamboo is a stim. So, from episode 1 onwards, Nezuko, for the most part, will be wearing this little, like, bamboo stim, the little bamboo stick she has in her mouth. And this is to help her calm down, because at the very beginning of the show, as you recall, she was in a big angry fit, and we needed to help calm her down so she doesn't bite people and, like, try to kill them and whatnot. So she wears this little bamboo stick on her mouth in order to help her calm down. And this kind of reminds me, stimming in general, as in like stimming, soothing, kind of almost repetitive behavior that you do in order to calm down or to like provide something like mental faculty slash concentration, but also in particular this type of like biting stim. For example, there are a number of necklaces or other chewy type of items that a person can buy in order to like simulate that biting mechanism. I actually had one myself, but I hated it because it was like, it was too hard. It was too hard. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. But that's kind of a similar mechanism that Nezuko relies on. Again, having a visible stim is also kind of associated with being autistic. You know, like some higher supports need might also have like the big headphones on because, you know, world loud. You need something to block it. You're gonna have your headphones on. But yeah, that's my thought process there. Number 7, childlike. This is kind of less about autism inherently and more about how society as a whole, but also anti-vaxx slash autism parents view their own children. So Nezuko within the show, for the most part, is kind of viewed as like an innocent, childlike type of being. The only exception really is when she's in battle, and of course her physical change matches that type of like mature type of thinking slash physicality that she has to use in order to fight. Otherwise, she's in like a more childlike type state, and on occasion will get even smaller, and even cuter, and even more childlike for like little small comedic scenes. And so the show kind of views Nezuko as this like somewhat childlike being, save for battles where she has to physically and mentally mature to a sense in order to like tackle the situation, because otherwise she just wouldn't be able to fight. At least kind of how the show reads to me on that regard. Now, the fandom has kind of taken this view as well to a certain degree, because as all fandoms are on God's internet, people, they like the saucy images, they like the saucy writings about the characters and whatnot, and they'll write a lot of stuff about characters, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But for some reason, most of the fandom takes an objection to the idea of lewding or making erotic content around Nezuko, because the argument goes, she's a young child. She should not be subject to this kind of thing. Even though I would argue that these same people would probably be fine with, like, Tanjiro, or Zenitsu, or Inosuke, them going through the erotic thought process or whatever, even though there's a very small age difference between Nezuko, who's 14 for most of the show, and the boys, who are like 15. Again, this might be like conflating two groups, the one that's completely okay with eroticizing every character of the show, and the one that takes issue with like the child-coded characters doing that. So there's the potential for that. But I would argue that like there tends to be more of that hypocrisy to a certain extent, one would argue. But nevertheless, this type of like infantilization, ultimately, that Nezuko goes through is similar to the way that like a lot of autistic people go through, because with being infantilized, a autistic person just can't have a sex life. They can't have it. They're too innocent and whatnot. And last, but never least, restrictive food eating. So, in the show, obviously, all of the demons, they have one thing that they can consume, and that is human flesh. And they enjoy this. They love the idea of eating human flesh. Now, of course, there is the one exception where Tamayo is able to consume tea. But nevertheless, outside of that, she only consumes tea. She has, on a moral level, restricted herself from eating the flesh, but those two things are the only things that she can physically consume. To a similar extent, although of course not as dramatic, autistic people have this kind of struggle around eating food, because there are issues around texture, flavor, placement, etc., etc. And so because of that, a lot of autistic people will restrict themselves in what they can, will be restricted in what they can eat. There's literally a disorder called like R-Kadi, which is an eating disorder that's different from other eating disorders because it's not about losing weight or any type of like physical bodily transformation. It's more the idea of these foods suck. I cannot eat this. Except when the this is stated. It's like most foods, save for like a very few couple of items that the autistic person can eat. And these few items are called safe foods because you know that regardless of what happens, you know that these foods are safe, provided that they stay the same, because sometimes food changes and it sucks. But nevertheless, there's a similarity in the way that these types of foods are restricted. So in conclusion, Demon Slayer is an anti-vax narrative, Muzan is the vaccine, vaccinate your children. This is a real life call, considering the everything going on in government. Vaccinate your children. Cheers. So I'm gonna make a little postscript. This is just purely for me. This is partly related to when I first wrote the script. I believe I'd only seen the first 3 seasons because that was when only the first 3 seasons were out, and then the 4th season dropped, and Nezuko's not really involved in the 4th season because the whole thing is about like the training arc and whatever. And then of course we go into the Infinity Castle. My apologies. We go into the Infinity Castle. That's going to be the next season. I don't know when the hell that drops. I think it's going to be like June, July. Who gives a shit? But yeah, I don't really believe Nezuko has that much to do in those ones, so that's why I didn't bring them up. This is mostly like a 3-season type of analysis. But nevertheless, I'm glad if you stuck to the end of this. I'm very glad that you joined me. Stick around for more stuff. I think, what are the 2 other video ideas I have in the work? I have a little video I want to work on about like unhinged tier lists I've made in the past and my explanation for those, and then a history of Tumblr via its website updates. I think that might be a little bit fun if you're involved in fandom, as I am. You might want to consider that. So do all of the YouTube stuff. Like, subscribe, hit the notification button, send this to your friends, send this to your coworkers, send this to your boss. Yeah.